Okay, good morning. Welcome back for the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Group hearing plannings this morning. We will start with our karakia. It's up on the screen. Thank you. Manawa wai, te manu ringa, manawa wai, te manu ranga, wai, e manu tai, e manu ora, kia whakamamu, kia tina, riei, tai kia. I've got no apologies this morning. Any conflicts of interest? No. So I will move the process for the hearings and deliberations on the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Plan. Could I have a seconder? Mick Gretney. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. So we move to our submitters. We've got two this morning. Our first one is Leon Cassidy from Omega Networks. If you'd like to come up. You've got 5 minutes. We'll ring a bell at 4 and then again at 5. And you can have questions after that. Yeah, it is just to the right.
You want me to use this?
If you want to do it.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, thank you. I'm Leon Cassidy, founder of Omega Networks. We built Pulse here within Wellington's digital layers. It's an open source platform for lifeline coordination. It's endorsed by Mana Whenua for its alignment with infrastructure sovereignty, intergenerational thinking, and circular value flows. The plan in front of you has the right intent. Consequence-based planning is a genuine advance. Community as a partner, not a recipient. It reads as a document with intent. This is the most ambitious plan our region has drafted. It is our plan for our region and for our home. What it needs is a foundation this region has not yet named. The digital layer, on which every coordination priority, every indicator, every lifeline, and every community connection actually lives. We'll get there. There we go. 2 years ago, the government's inquiry into Cyclone Gabrielle issued 14 recommendations. The chair wrote in the preface, "We are frustrated that many of these recommendations are not new and are suggested in previous reviews." Recommendation 8 goes into the heart of what this plan needs. Legislate for and invest in a single common operating platform and picture for emergency management to be adopted by every council and the National Emergency Management Agency. NEMA is working on it. July last year, I sat in the Emergency Management Sector Operating System Town Hall. I asked, will what you're designing be a template for local authorities to run and operate themselves? Their answer, we need to have that conversation with them. To be honest, wouldn't it be nice if we could build something truly for the sector? We want them to pull that forward. We have a governance void. Our nation is waiting for a region to step into it. We, with this plan, in this cycle, can be the region that does. Our communities are asking for this. Our engineers, our workforce are begging for it. They want to be in control of the infrastructure that serves them, not as recipients of services, as the guardians. We have the platform, we have the data, and we have the people. What the plan is missing is the foundation. How these systems get seeded, how they interact, how they are nurtured and iterated across generations. My submission lays out 3 operational steps. The first, name digital infrastructure as a distinct lifeline, because restoring the connectivity does not restore our capability. 2, build the monitoring platform first, because the act of building creates the baselines 20 of the plan's indicators don't yet have. This should align with what NEMA is already scoping. The 3rd, embed procurement as strategy, because resilience must not compete for discretionary funding. Digital sovereignty embedded into every system we build, we own, and that we pass on. The gap is real. It has been missed again and again. Lives have been lost, billions in damage. Every time we say never again. Every time the same gaps remain. But if we do this right, if this plan sets the region on a path and the nation follows, then the platform built for the emergency is the same system that operates our home day to day. One that is sovereign, open, transparent, and accountable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leon. Any questions for Leon? Meze, sorry.
Thank you,
Oh, okay, you're little, sorry.
Thank you, Leon, for your submission. Just explain what if we accept your submission and we did things consistent with what you're saying, what does the practical difference look like? So, in the middle of an emergency, in a crisis situation,
Is your microphone on?
Do
Sorry.
you want to ask again?
Sorry, they can't hear you online. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, I'm just asking if we accept your submission and act on it and do the things, what is the difference compared to now to somebody in the future with the sort of ideas you're talking about having been implemented? Somebody in an emergency and crisis situation in the middle of an event, what is the difference that would happen then compared to now?
Specifically, someone who's trying to coordinate the event, or someone on the ground?
Somebody on the ground, just a person who is a resident or citizen who's caught up in an emergency event in a crisis situation and seeking help, support, and managing the crisis. What is it? What does the difference matter for them?
Yeah, well, I think the suggestions in my plan focus more on how we coordinate as the coordination teams as a whole. But if I was to put myself in the shoes of someone, maybe I'm a plumber, and there's been an earthquake, there's a leak down the road. I can go to the nearest community hub, still have connectivity to the SCADA systems, to all of the data that Wellington Water has, the procurement system, and me as a contractor could then go, hey, I'm here, I'm on the ground, I can now go, I'll accept that job, even though the communications platform's down, my tools are in my box at my home, 2 meters down the road, I can now go and fix it. Is connecting our workforce into the platform so they can act on it themselves is the main goal.
Yep, Izzy.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us. I am just curious around the relationship that you see between NEMA and REMO and or local government entities in relation to the building of the infrastructure required for this more sophisticated, like common operating picture. What's your suggestion on the relationship between what NEMA is doing at a national level and what we should be looking to advance locally? Yeah,
so I'm fortunate enough to speak to a lot of the teams across NEMA and mainly inside the cities themselves, the digital team specifically and emergency management. What it would look like is local government should own and operate the platform independently. It should be up to the city, right? If you're running a water network, you should be able to run it in your way with your philosophy. What NEMA wants to do is push down templates that can be adopted based on that philosophy, because it's possible with digital technology today. So what that would look like is for Porirua City Council, and what we're doing there is we'll build a monitoring platform locally run by that city, trying to keep it in Wellington as well, so it's on when we need it. And then we'll feed that data up into Remo, and then we'll feed that data from Remo up into NEMA. That's that north-south, but we also need to think about that east-west that we're missing significantly right now. How we can get data from Wellington Water, I know there's changes there, but it's a good example, to even the EOCs during the emergency, or from, say, the telecommunications network to EOC. And I mean, this data exists. Chorus can tell across Wellington region when there's a power outage at the street level, at the suburb level, and the regional level within like probably 2 seconds. And we don't use that data in our EOCs.
Yep, follow.
How does that relate to, like, say, the digital twin? Because I think I've heard you talk about that before, and I know Wellington's done some great work in that space. Like, how does that relate to the digital twin model? Is that related, or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a plug-in ecosystem, right? You want your common operating system to be able to adapt into these different layers. So if I'm a Remo, you've got your monitoring system in Upper Hutt, Andrew's got his in Wellington City, Anita might have hers slightly different, but as Remo, I've got a digital twin, so to speak, but just a visualization layer that can plug into yours, Wellington's, Upper Hutt's, and then feed my specific view of it.
Okay, thank you, Leon.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ray Hughes from the South Wairarapa Whenua Action Group. Morning. You've given us a handout. I think the people online have seen them. So you've got 5 minutes and you'll get a ballot for.
Right. Quite simple. Okay. I'm supported today by Jill Greathead, our SWAG coordinator, and Marino, I can never pronounce his last name, one of our technical advisors. My name is Ray Hughes. I'm representing SWAG, as we call it. Thank you for the opportunity to present our submission to you today. I will tell you I'm not going to read the slides. I'm just going to talk around them. I provided the slides as guides for you. Right. Yep. Okay, who is SWAG? We're the South Wairarapa Whenua Advisory Group. We started a few years ago as a collection of affected neighbours and our supporters protesting against the proposed Far North Solar Farm Greytown Industrial Power Scheme, as is known. We came together, we've been through the Environment Court, there was 13 of us and Section 274 submitters in a 2.5-year court, which is still not finished. We're not here to review that, that's just a guide, a background. What we're going to do is, while we've been going through this process, we have found that it's very little awareness of the impact of these type of technologies on the environment and the communities if something goes wrong, okay? There's a drive to adopt these renewable energy sources and others without an appreciation of the impact on our communities. Sorry. So thank you, by the way. We think your draft plan is well laid out, easy to follow the intent. We completely support it. Okay, so good. We do believe in that holistic example. What we consider it doesn't explicitly consider is the impact and recovery of the community from these type of technologies. Industrial power schemes are new. It's the obvious one going on agricultural land, but fertiliser factories, flour mills, feed mills, all have an impact if an earthquake happens underneath them or a storm hits or whatever. But the fertiliser mills, the feed factories, the flour mills, they've had enough incidents and accidents over the years to go, might have a plan for that and how to control it. We consider that internationally, it's reasonably obvious that some of these new technologies certainly have not had that same understanding. I'm sorry, but this one I am going to read a bit of the slide. The issues that we see, I'm just taking the solar power scheme because that's one that we're directly impacted by, soil contamination by active panel deterioration over the years. We have evidence for this, all of it's been presented in the Environment Court and accepted by them. Storm damage, broken panels. In the recent Wales and Cornwall one, they found glass 10 kilometres away from the site. Okay. Fires. There's no easy method to stop a fire. By the way, this is actually on houses as well. It's not just on big industrial power schemes. The latest message from emergency management is, and fire people, is to let it burn. Okay. Water doesn't put it out. Electrical fires traditionally use carbon dioxide to kill it. Unfortunately, when you get something the size of a solar power scheme, and not just here, Wellington region, by the way, these are already in far north, which is, for example, we can actually spread toxic smoke and contamination across the land. Where we are is South Wairarapa, is loosely aggregated gravels. That is what the GNS plans state what we are. There's a little bit of alluvial on top of it, so grass does grow, but most of it is loosely aggregated gravels. So internationally, it appears that these concerns have not been well considered or developed. And just in case people think, we're just flying off about thing. Recently in Wheatstone, as in March 2026, a solar power scheme was damaged by an EF1 tornado. That is the lowest level tornado. It is smaller than the tornado that hit South Auckland and caused extensive damage and killed people in 2021. So just think of the damage that one caused. And Texas, Indiana. There's one in Texas a couple of months earlier. So it's common. Okay, right. The other concern is probably more of a concern is a battery energy storage system. Now, we will make a side comment that far north, particularly stated in the Environment Court that they weren't including this, but now suddenly they are. So that's another issue. The lithium-ion batteries used in these battery energy storage systems are exactly what is in EVs. There are ships that no longer transport EVs with their batteries installed because they've lost. Thank you. So, why there's a system failure incident database so you can have a look and see that we're not just blowing smoke. Sorry, that was intentional. Sorry. Why we're raising this with you is that we consider that the hazards that you have outlined correctly in your area, in your plan, it will impact on these new technologies, and these new technologies will impact on the environment, responding to emergencies, and the communities that are already there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions for Ray? No, appears not. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you for coming in. That was good. So we now move to the analysis of submissions. Who's speaking to that? Is it you? No? No one's speaking to it? Thank you. Thank you, Leon. I assume I'm moving this to put on the table. Yep, I've moved it to put on the table, seconded by Mayor Little. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Away you go, Jess. Are you speaking to this?
Yeah, okay. All right, so there's a table that was attached to the report. I don't know if you want to go through the report first, or do you want questions? I think Steve had a couple of questions, didn't you?
Was it this one?
I had a couple of questions.
Oh, about submitters seeing the information.
Oh, so I just had a question whether the submitters
Oh,
were made-
microphone. Sorry, you've got someone online. Kiri can't hear you.
Sorry, Jess. I just had a question around whether submitters were made aware of the officers' analysis that's in the back. Were they made aware so they could have a read of what the officers' thoughts were around it?
These would be publicly available on the website, so they can easily, like all of our papers that go up on there, they go publicly aware. So they would have seen it. I will be following up afterwards with the results of this with each of the submitters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good as gold. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to you, Jess. Has anyone got any other questions for Jess? Yes, Perry?
Thank you. I just had a question around the Wellington Free Ambulance submission and the response around, in particular, the classification, where they've said that they're more classified as health rather than lifeline. Could you talk through, was there a reason for that approach, or is it just I was just curious to see that their feedback, and I wondered if there was a reason of that framing in the original plan.
So Wellington Free are listed as part of health. That's generally outlined in the Act. They're not considered a lifeline as part of the Act. The Act really clearly identifies all the specific lifelines, and Wellington Free Ambulance, unfortunately, is not listed as that. I've taken obviously we've taken their feedback on board. Ironically, they are included in a lot of what we call the emergency services coordination in real life, I'd say. So in practice, Wellington Free are very much involved in the emergency services space, and we have excellent relationships, operational relationships with them. So this is that joy of a legislative piece of work, identifying officially what a lifeline is versus how we utilise them in practice, if that makes sense. Yeah, but we absolutely engage with them, and they are more so seemingly aligned with the FENS, police, Wellington Free space when we engage them during our work, but ultimately they sit in the health space.
Anyone else got any questions? You don't need to go through it all, do you? No. Deliberations.
So I think if everyone's okay with it, we can go through the table at the back, which is really a summary of the deliberations and officers' advice.
Yep.
I'll take that you've read the summary document in terms of what we found. Overall, the feedback was, I would suggest, incredibly good, because there wasn't massive deviations from what we had presented. And I was just talking before about even NEMA's submission was very light, I would suggest, in terms of I've heard them reject totally group plans. So the fact that they were pulling up tiny little things, I'm quite happy with that. So that's good news, and I think that just shows the depth of reviews that we did across with the sector and with our partners, that therefore when it was sent out there was no need to do the additional. We didn't have any, Wellington Free did obviously put one in, but we didn't have a huge amount because we'd already done a huge amount of consultation prior to public consultation. So if we're okay, I'll just go through from the top, I guess, and we can comment on them if that's okay.
Sure. Yep.
Sorry, just a question, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's fine.
As you go through them, can you please put to which submission they came through, those various, because that's one thing I found a little bit difficult reading through those, is I really wanted to align them to which submission they had been answered on behalf of.
I can try to remember right back then, but I guess it's a consolidated piece of feedback. I will be able to identify some that are specific.
Okay.
But equally, some of the submissions, as you can read, don't quite necessarily even align to the group plan. They're just kind of more like a general statement that we find that happens a bit. And then some I've joined together to So there might be a couple, but I can certainly have a look. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the first one is about whether there should be more detail in how priorities will be implemented. Not surprisingly, this comes out a lot, probably mostly in the public submission space. So when I say public submissions, I'm meaning the ones that were done by Public versus Wellington Free and NEMA that were included, okay? Often people want to know the how, we get that. This plan is not a how plan though, right? Like it is a 5-year strategic document. So one of the things we are looking at doing is creating significantly more clarity and even creating like a web page that might provide a lot more of that detail for the public. But obviously our advice is that this is not an operational plan. So we do need to make sure that we maintain the integrity of what this plan is supposed to be. So I understand 100% that people want that detail. It's just I don't think this is the place for this plan to provide that detail. That would be my thoughts on this.
I would have agreed just an FAQ page, but I don't know about anyone else.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think
Oh, you left the microphone. Sorry.
I agree with the comment that it seemed more about seeking greater assurance as opposed to questioning what was laid out. And I think which is a natural sort of thing to do. And often people aren't going to get assurance unless they see it actually being put into place in an emergency. So it's kind of the proof of the pudding being in the eating. That's what I interpret some of those comments to be.
Yeah. I think it's just important to note in the subcommittee that this is a lot of new activities and new amount of accountability that we haven't had before. So it's not going to happen from the 1st of July. We'll have this accountability in place. We've obviously got to build that program. And that will happen over time. And like you say, there'll be times when we can measure certain things and times we can't measure certain things. But the intent is to absolutely build that accountability over the life cycle of this plan. And so hopefully if we can create even a landing page even of some sort, we need to figure out what that looks like. People can go there and see that information on a regular basis, because I do think they can come to and see all the minutes from joint committee meetings, for example, but I don't think people necessarily know to go there. So even if we're linking to, like we can create an environment that hopefully people can utilise and more easily access updates. Yeah. Is kind of how I'm hoping to show that progress over time, so they feel confident we're actually doing something. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is a similar one, which is whether the plan should more clearly state how governance will monitor delivery and report progress. I mean, I've gone through and had a look at some edits, and we can do some small ones, but again, it clearly does describe the roles and responsibilities of our governance structure, which is the joint committee is the main one. I don't think we need to add really detailed mechanisms. It was a conversation I had with NEMA as well, as one of the differences with this document is it's very easy to read in plain English. Yeah. I want to try and retain that, because that was a difference from previous years. It was very jargonistic, and so this time we've tried to make it more easy to read and understand, and once it's designed, it's even better. Like, it's fantastic. So I don't want to be adding unnecessary jargon, and again, I think we can build a picture where if people want to see the detail, they can go to this site. I think that there is going to be this landing page. I don't want to pad out this document that is already large.
Yeah. I'm happy with the minor change supported. Is everyone else?
Yep.
Okay.
Whether current priorities and timeframes are realistic given sector capacity and resourcing constraints. Well, we've been really honest about that, both to CEG, both to council CEs, both to organisations, partners. And then someone has said that we put funding in. Well, that's not obviously the route for that plan either. We don't have funding included in the group plan. That's a responsibility for councils, would be in the LTP. But I think I'll just go back to that. We put it on the table about, oh, there's a big cat on the TV.
Yes, beautiful cat.
We put it on the table about whether EM was a responsibility, something we wanted to lean into, and CARE said, yes, we want to push this hard and we'll give you that resource. So we have written the plan based on that guideline, and I think the key point is we're going to keep coming back and reminding everybody about that and showing progress. But I don't think we should water down the plan because we don't want to be ambitious.
Well, it's council's choice whether they fund, and it quite often comes to the LTP and people cut it. So we do have to be a bit more cautious as mayors, I think.
But again, it's not just councils too. Of course, it's all of our partners, agencies too, who also need to come with additional resources as well. Not just councils. It's not just councils.
Any comments on that? Are we happy with that one?
Yep.
There was I haven't been telling you who's been doing those. Those were generalised feedback for those the submissions. They were like generalised kind of feedback. Whether the plan should more clearly recognise high density urban communities, there were two people that noted that. One was Carol, who was unable to come today, and there was also a community group from Wellington City that are looking at doing the lifeboat project.
And I think there was at least one other one where it was buried in there.
You'll have to
Buried.
They made a comment about
microphone. Sorry.
Sorry, there was one other submitter too that buried in their submission. I missed a bunch of other things. They acknowledged the issue about high density dwellings, and it was in the context more, I think, of people with disabilities, neurodivergency, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we
Leave it on.
yeah
It's easier.
we know that high density urban communities is incredibly important. In fact, we have a specific section from our organisation in Remo that work in the CBD. It's a really complex problem, and it's something that we know that's in there. We have it covered off exactly like you say with disproportionately affected, and I think there's a connotation that disproportionately affected can necessarily be negative, but it's also just those who are disproportionately affected for which we would say that apartment dwellers do actually fit into that space. So I think we can clarify that as part of this piece, that there is...
They were good submissions.
Yeah, they were good submissions, and funnily enough, one of the submissions, I believe they're doing a piece of work with Wellington City Council that we've done a resilience fund application for, which is a lifeboat project. So that's already, I believe, had a resilience fund submission. We haven't heard back yet, but so it's in the works. I think for the purpose of the plan, we can certainly clarify somewhere in there that disproportionately affected could include the CBD as well. Through our risk profile, we obviously also say we know it's a CBD, but I think that, you know, equally there's a whole bunch of different categorizations of people who are disproportionately affected, and that is one big one, certainly because of the numbers. But equally, we're trying to cast that wider net. So we don't feel we should specifically put something in there, as there is programs and work that is ongoing in that space, and will be caught in due course, basically, with the work program.
Would it be possible, however, to say that I think because the recommendation here seems to acknowledge it as an issue, and as part of the acknowledgement to confirm that there is attention being given to this as an issue would be useful.
Yep. So I'll just add that text in. So this links into the next one, which is about stronger recognition of disproportionate impacts on disabled people in neurodivergent households with complex needs. Again, we can reinforce the language. I think it's connected into that space, and it's hard because the suggestions such as sensory friendly welfare spaces, that is that level below this plan. What I will do is ensure that it goes to those. We have what we call a welfare coordination group. We'll make sure that information goes to them, but it would be unusual for us to put in that kind of level of detail into this plan. But also there is in the group plan a work program specifically about the delivery of welfare services writ large, and I think that can build into that space too, so it can fold in under there.
And you'll acknowledge those submitters with that. Yeah. Okay, keep going. Keep going.
Whether the plan should do more to describe how communities will be supported to build resilience in practice. Again, this is where they're looking for that more visibility of that next tier down, and I think that that is again not the place for this plan. I think there's a whole lot of projects or key programs of work that are listed in this group plan, and as a result, again, I think we'd be putting that information up on this website, which would provide all of that clarity and detail. I think the key point is the plan signalling the strategic intent to do that. The how has to be done at a lower level. So, yeah,
I agree. Steve? Hang on, I'll turn.
Just as part of that, that detail underneath this, will the Wellington Regional Waste Minimisation and Management Plan sit under that? Just because of the, you can imagine the waste coming from a natural disaster is quite.
yeah, that's right. I'd say there's a lot of, it's funny, every plan that's probably ever written could somehow be connected to emergency management ultimately, right? But in terms of hierarchy, generally not. It would be like a flow in. We would deal with the potential impacts of that afterwards. One of the things we are trying to get as part of this plan is more integration, so that when that plan is being created, emergency management is a lens that is put on it. But we wouldn't have the capacity as such to kind of build all of these plans and understand, because you imagine there's huge ones. Even the new my brain's gone. The new climate change, you know, we have that as a lens, but we don't put it underneath because it's just so large. But I know we do waste planning, for example, to deal with leftover waste and what that would look like and where that would go. We call it disposal of debris plans, or is what we call it, because that's what we need to do in that moment to utilise it. I'm not sure I've answered your question.
You wouldn't normally put that in there?
It's like, where would you stop, I guess, is the question.
It's probably more a direction within this pointing, that's where you need to go to look to find more information, is the Wellington Region Waste Minimisation Plan is kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and there's been conversations about linking to other documents in this. The problem is it takes a lot of admin to keep it up to date often. And what is a core document to link versus what's not a core document to link. I mean, happy to consider it, but I think we'd then have to consider a significant number of other ones as well, potentially. And then what does that look like? I mean, again, do we put that in the website almost more as a subset to go down? Because I don't want, it would be difficult to constantly be updating this plan because it's a legislated plan. It becomes complicated. Yeah, but I'll make a note on that.
I mean, I would have thought that the issue about kind of waste disposal as a consequence of an event is a second order thing, that this is, as the title says, this is about the emergency management of the emergency, the crisis point. The stuff about which is more recovery is what you then think about disposing of event generated waste and what have you. So yeah, I support the advice that's been given.
Okay. I think we can definitely clean the linking up though in this website page that I'm hoping to get created.
Okay.
The next one is whether the plan should strengthen its treatment of lifelines and continuity of essential services. Feedback highlighted water sanitisation, medication access, hospitals, fuel. Gosh, it was quite a significant list. And essential services for vulnerable high density communities. So that came across a couple of the public submissions. Limited, again, we don't want to be adding service by service into this, because lifelines is very clearly articulated in the Act. but we can tweak the wording, I guess, to have continued. Yeah, there's a few
Yeah.
little words we can
And
tweak,
that's
but
also
I
FAQ. Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't want to add again individual line items, because we need to build this to be. I find we're trying to build it slightly broader so it can be more inclusive as opposed to exclusive to people. Yeah.
Everyone happy with that?
Yep. Pharmacies and medication access. That was a individual's submission, and wanting to just talk about medication, which again, that's predominantly actually a health issue. And again, we would be dealing with that as almost like a second order impact during an event. We certainly don't deal with that day to day in the CDEM sphere. And so we know it's a problem, definitely, but we wouldn't add that to the lifelines for the same reason as above.
Yep. Everyone's happy? Yep.
Whether hospitals should be more visible in the plan. Again, I can add a few like clarifications in there, but yeah, I
Same thing.
same sort of thing. We've just got to be so careful about how
Next level up.
Yeah. And again, health has very clear responsibilities, not even under the CDEM Act, I mean, which they do, even just in their general operation, they have significant responsibilities. So we'd almost be duplicating that if we were to put that in there. Yeah.
Okay. Same as the next one.
Yes. I feel for Wellington Free Ambulance because I do genuinely believe that they are underrated in terms of what their contribution is. And so there might be an opportunity for us to give that visibility, especially because they're funded, not, they are essentially a charity. So I do think there is absolutely an opportunity to help there, but I don't think it's about changing the clarification of what they are. I think it's more supporting them and being more clear about what they do and their contribution, which we could possibly find a way to do that. But I'll just make sure it's clear in there. But yeah, unfortunately, they are aligned to health.
Okay.
Then they went down to saying that essentially their representation. We agree it's difficult to have enough people to be represented at any. I think there's a terminology issue here because they're talking about ESCCs, which are Emergency Services Coordinating Committees, which are what we call a peacetime activity. And my understanding is they do go to those because it's in peacetime. And then there was kind of an interchange where they slipped into the response phase where they were saying we wouldn't have the ability to go to every single EOC. Of course, we would never expect that because they're all operating at the same time. So we would have them at the ECC, which we had in the last event. So I think there was also a little bit of a mixture in their terminology that they popped in there, but we'll just look at that and just make sure it's clear. But again, their ability to staff is the same ability to staff issue that everybody has across all of the sector. Yeah.
Okay.
So ambulance talked about dependencies, and again, we were like, these are operational activities, which we are more than aware of, particularly with the fuel situation. They are listed as a priority. So we don't feel that this should be put in the plan.
Right.
And then we head into one of the ones potentially, I guess, where Leon fits, which is digital dependency and digital infrastructure. That's an interesting one because we do have, in the work programs, there's just a significant amount of work that constantly goes on in this space. A lot of what he's talking about is more at the operational level. Even when he was talking today, it was very much from an operational implementation space rather than the strategic direction. The plan is positioning that we need better intelligence. Yes, we need, but it's that is a tool, I guess, right? And so the plan's being written as an outcome statement. The tool is a feed that will affect multiple things, which he acknowledged.
And the lifelines are at the table. I found him quite interesting because he made out he was working with our council. I know nothing about him.
Yeah, there were some, I mean, the information that he says is readily available is not readily available, and we can tell from last week, some of the Wellington Water Work information isn't as readily
That's not
available
accurate.
as perhaps he would like to think. But there is absolutely a understanding that the common operating picture is a critical piece of work, and we continue to work on that on an ongoing basis. And it's taking years and years to get all that information, and even just the training burden is really significant for something like that. But I also just want to say we are connected with NEMA too on what they are doing and working through all that. But again, it's a tool. Yeah.
I wonder whether he was arguing for some other hardware, software, or whatever. Wasn't I get his point, and I remember being in Christchurch in 2011, the big earthquake in February, and the first thing everybody does is rush for their phones and all the rest of it. Those networks stood up, and at least for citizens and stuff. I don't know what it was like for the emergency services and what have you, but he does have a good point. But I'm not quite sure he was arguing that there is some extra kit that is required, or whether it's something else.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either.
It sounded to me like he was talking about his own platform and wanting to
Yeah.
He was
potentially
definitely wanting to
utilise
push that. Yeah.
And that's great. There's lots of platform options out there. What we've found is that's the tool, right? And you can't use that platform until we're in a position that we have really good relationships with these different organisations to be able to share that information proactively in a response.
I wonder about in relation to information sharing. What is the gap? Is it the tool, or is it the willingness to share information, or is it just that we're not sort of far enough down the path with NEMA in terms of specifying and understanding? Because some of the data we obviously have ready access to, and some we don't. But what would you say is to diagnose the kind of what's not happening yet to get us to what we should be having in terms of a common operating picture?
I mean, scope's the first conversation there, right? So, I think there is a variety of issues. There is the tool is in its infancy, and it's based in a GIS tool system. So the tool is there. Why we don't get the information is there isn't necessarily a willingness to give that information over for lots of reasons. We work through that. There's often, we find with police, for example, there's a lot of, oh no, that's private and you can't have that. So there's a lot of complex reasons about information sharing. I think the Privacy Act is a huge problem for us, particularly in response. That's used a lot to stop the information being shared, and it's incredibly frustrating. So there's a lot. It's not a simple answer, I think. I think that's the problem when we're working through components of it, and we're gradually building and this picture together. But it is a huge training burden too. How many councils have GIS staff ready and available to do that system and make it work? Not that many. And so your tool's only as good as the people who are able to create it in the moment, right? So it's complex. I don't think it's one sole simple thing, but we're certainly making significant progress. Over the last 3 years, we have made significant progress.
In relation to the Privacy Act, I completely respect and acknowledge the importance of the Privacy Act. I do wonder, though, in an emergency situation, whether there would be a reasonable argument that you could suggest a legislation change to override some of those Privacy Act considerations in terms of, as you say, at a critical timing, it is important for us to have all that data. Is that something that has been had as a conversation, or is that something right?
So we had obviously the declaration last week, which was interesting, and we could have used powers for information for that. What we're trying to understand is whether the information is even available. And the questions we had last week was that it potentially is not. So I think that's the very first question, is what is actually available. People assume that information has been collected and that people know certain things about certain numbers. I mean, even the power company was a really interesting example, because we've asked questions in February about that level of detail, about which houses, how long, and we could not get that information. They said they did not have it.
No, that we had them this week, and they said they're a level. You need to go to the level below. So you need to go to the people who are actually paying the bill, not Wellington Electricity. So it got really
Yeah.
confusing.
So it's interesting that there's this perception that this information is there and available, and sure it is in a different way.
Yeah.
But we could not go to a power company and say, in the Wairapa, for example, we were like, how many are out? How long would that be? And where are those roads, those particular houses that you think you won't restore, so we can focus on them first? That data was not available. They said it was not. So even if we had asked for it through a declaration, it wouldn't have been available for us to have. That's a problem in itself too. And with Wellington Water, I'm not convinced that the information is necessarily available either.
No, it's not.
Maybe this is an operational level of detail, but is that being sort of scoped and with some detail around what we would have liked to have and what was missing, and then an action plan around trying to get access to that? Okay.
So specifically, if we think about last week, absolutely there's a whole flood forecasting component to this actual group plan, which is fantastic, and I'm really pleased that we've managed to get that in there, which talks about, so if we're talking specifically about floods. So yes, that will be part of the scope. What do we need? What does that look like? How do we use that to make decisions? Because that's incredibly important, and then that will expand out into other areas. What I would say is that the Joint Committee have the opportunity to really drive that over this cycle of this plan. So through Darren and the KEG too, Lifelines sit on KEG. How do we make sure that they're giving that information, what they have, and if they don't have it, being honest about what they do and don't have. I think sometimes there's that grey area where people don't want to necessarily say what they don't have because people assume they've got it, and why wouldn't they?
They do it at a local level though, so
Yeah.
they'll do it at our EOC. So MSD will come in and they'll tell us at a local level where our issues are, but they can't.
I think MSD is probably one of the better ones, because we have such a connected needs assessment, and luckily the Privacy Act has some new changes to it that enable us to do that and utilise it, which is really helpful. A lot of it's when you start getting into private companies, so like Lifelines, potentially Wellington Water, I can understand might be because they have agreements in place to deliver services, and anytime there's contractual spaces in there, I think it gets a lot more complicated, and then police will be more, this is intel that we can't give you. So it's MSD, I think, is probably a good example of how it can work, because we can also get that disclaimer directly from the person. It just makes it so much easier.
That's true.
Yeah.
So could we have a paper on that at some point in terms of like what's a paper come to CDEM in terms of what's
Darren's
missing?
writing.
Is that possible, so that we can then advocate for the changes? Because I think it's super important, especially with, for example, Wellington Electricity. Like if we can liaise with them on what is needed, that would be important, I think. Thank you.
Yep. Going back to the actual group plan, are we in agreement that we will just look where possible to tighten that wording, but not going into that detail?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so the next one is whether the plan should include broader recognition of emerging or localised risks, such as battery energy storage systems. So that was the last one. Obviously, we have gone to a full consequence-based approach plan, and we have done emerging hazards. Again, we have a direction from NEMA about what we need to include in these plans, so we followed that in terms of emerging hazards. But we don't feel that going down to that kind of level would be appropriate for this plan.
Okay. Kerry, I will let you speak even though you're actually not a member, but because you've got your hand raised.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, and I thought that I was just noting around the access to people's information and within the electricity sector. I'm an advisor to the Electricity Authority and the chair of the Energy Hardship across New Zealand. They do have the information. They know exactly when people are connected and then non-connected and where electricity is down, but they are bound by their own contracts with with customers. So it would have to be a legislative direction before electricity companies would get involved with divulging people's private information. There would need to be a layer in there so that when people are connected, they agree to that, or else that's something that would need to be taken up with the Comcom. You know, they're the regulator for the utilities, but they hold on to that information very tightly and have their legal cover that. So I'm certainly within the even the public-owned companies, maybe, but it sits with the electricity companies, not with Wellington Electric.
Okay, thank you for that. It's helpful. Okay. Plan should be included. Yep, Andrew.
I was just going to say, I don't want to get too involved in the discussion, but there are exceptions under the Privacy Act, including preservation of life and limb and what have you. So rather than looking for legislative change, one thing might be to see whether the Privacy Commissioner would make a ruling about the disclosure of certain types of information during an emergency situation. That might give some leeway to requests for disclosure.
That's a good idea. Maybe in that Lifeline paper.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think what we were hoping for is that obviously having that in the moment can sometimes take longer and be unhelpful. So logically, it would be good to be able to engage and understand all of that beforehand, right? So it may be something where we're like, if we did pull this trigger, what would that look like? But that takes relationships, which we need to make sure that we enhance that. But we have pushed back to NEMA quite a bit about this Privacy Act and how that works in the EM sphere, because it is quite a roadblock. And I get it in day-to-day why it's incredibly important, but in an emergency it's really not. It's about preserving people's life, and I think it would be interesting to push back and see if they could get like a reading almost somehow for in an emergency. It would look a little bit different, but we're constantly on them about that.
Depends on the size of the emergency, doesn't it? So if we ticked off whether the plan should include broader recognition, was that what you were up to?
Yeah, we said that we wouldn't go down to
Yep.
that level of detail, and that connects to the next one, for which that submission was also connected, which was hazardous fire, toxic smoke scenarios. We wouldn't want to think to put that in there unless you want us to switch out something that's already in there. But again, toxic smoke is a very FENS driven.
Yeah. No. Everyone's right with that? You're right?
The next one is whether the plan should provide a stronger expression of Te Ao Māori, mana whenua relationships, te tiriti considerations, and how iwi or mana whenua were engaged. We've definitely looked at that and are proposing to add a te tiriti section in there, just a statement, just to clarify that it is one of the guiding principles along with the legislation. And we have talked about how mana whenua were engaged in this plan, so I don't think that needs to be, my advice is to be supported, but I do think te tiriti adding that statement will be really, really good.
Yep, that's right with that. Yep.
The next one is whether terminology, governance roles, statutory arrangements, legal descriptions should be corrected and clarified. So yes, we will identify those that need to be fixed and fix those as we need to go. The next one is whether recovery section should be strengthened to better explain recovery, operational transition, formal statutory transition, and the region's strategic recovery approach. Again, some of those specific things that this is from NEMA that we've put in there, we have looked at and adjusted and made the changes as recommended. And so yeah, we've done them where where it was recognised. Most of their thoughts we have incorporated. Everyone happy? Yep. Whether the plan should place greater emphasis on practical exercising and interoperability across agencies. This was from Wellington Free. this is an interesting one because it's down to that next level of detail, and we have a group-wide training and exercises plan. So I think that's where that targeted information would go. We can check that we are reinforcing the importance of exercising and interoperability, but I wouldn't probably want to go into, exercise design and all of that in
Minor
this plan.
strength fitting's okay. Yep, everyone's nodding. Yep.
Whether volunteers and community participation should be more explicitly recognised. That's interesting because I thought we made it very clear in this document.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I would say, I can have another glance over it, but I think we've really clearly gone, the community's incredibly
I
important.
don't know if I've wasted time though. I thought it was very clear.
Yeah.
Mm. Yep.
Whether the plan should say more about community safety, law and order, and policing needs during prolonged emergencies. So that was Carol, I think, who wasn't able to make it today. Again, that's a level of detail that goes below this, that I know police consider this in every event, the importance of this. So I wouldn't be proposing to put anything in detail in the plan.
Yep, everyone's nodding. Yep.
Whether the monitoring and evaluation framework is sufficient to demonstrate real progress and capability improvement. A number of submitters question whether they measure outcomes versus activity, which I have to admit I also found interesting because we specifically turn them to measure outcomes instead of activities, because we know that just because you measure a COP, so this is where it's an interesting one. We haven't measured whether we have a COP. We measure whether the activities as a result of the COP are enhanced or the outcomes are enhanced. So we can certainly, again, go back over it. Our position is that the indicators shouldn't be redesigned because they did already come to the Joint Committee for approval previously. But I also want to acknowledge that of the 30 indicators, we don't have 30 indicators ready to go. Like was rightly said, on July 1st, they will need to evolve over time, and we need to get that information. But we feel quite, that's a huge step up, this section, from previous years. We're all happy with that? Whether the plan should be made easier to navigate and read. I could show you the draft plan in design format if that would make you feel comfortable, but I can tell you that the draft format looks amazing once it's in design space. You even see the strategy.
Yeah.
Some of the feedback in the thing was it was raved about the ease of
Yeah. So we once it's designed, I'm sure it will look fantastic.
Yeah, we trust you.
That is all.
Thank you, Jess. Any other comments?
No.
So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Brings us to the end. Closing karakia. It's not that one, it's the other. Oh, you've got it. You're right, Andrew. Yep. Kia tau. Kia ora, kia ranga, kia ora, kia ora. Kia whakamama, tina. Thank you, everybody. Thank you online.